This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Thanks, witnesses, for being with us today. I just want to chat just quickly, Mr. Rosenberg, to follow up on Mr. Desjardins' comments about the partisanship. How many, besides obviously Chuck Strahl, how many known conservatives were you aware of that worked for or were members?
Michael Fortier was a member, was a mentor, rather. The original board had, Bill Davis on it. I'd have to go back and look. There were also NDP members on it.
Pretty minimal compared. So I think what I'm saying, I don't think anyone considers, well, known from the block, but I don't think anyone would look at the foundation and say, oh, that's purely a nonpartisan one. I want to get back to the original donation. When the 140,000, 70,000 came through, the foundation was aware that some of it was coming directly from mainland China, were they not?
No, the foundation was aware that the check, or whatever it was deposited into the Bank of Montreal by a Canadian corporation, Millennium Golden Eagle Canada, Inc.
And no one was aware there was any link to mainland China or the PRC?
If anyone, I think the people who were looking at the receipting...
Is when was the foundation aware?
The whole issue of, this link to the PRC, we knew we were dealing with Chinese individuals, but we also knew that and this is where all the confusion comes in, my understanding is that people sometimes use corporations to make donations for them. People control corporations, and they'll decide for whatever reason to use the corporation.
Was there no suspicion? No, this really doesn't.
We weren't suspicious, I guess, partly because we didn't think there was anything to this that was asking us to do anything untoward. As I said, we basically had a free run with what we were going to do with this money.
But you weren't no one was stepping forward before then saying, here's $140,000, just send the receipt off to China. It didn't happen until after.
It didn't really get picked up. And if you look at the documents that are there, there's correspondence between two employees in the foundation without ever CCing me or even the executive director.
Time in your 4 years, did you this doesn't smell right?
I didn't, because of the nature of how we were introduced to these folks, their antecedents in having donated to the University of Toronto, the fact that, the ambassador, our ambassador knew them, and the fact that these conferences, the only right they had was that the conferences would bear their names. The content of the conferences was not up to them.
Looking back, do you think you were just naive, perhaps willfully blind to this?
I don't think so. I know there are different, people have said there are perceptions out there, and I appreciate that, and I feel bad about it, because I think the foundation, has been so tarred by this. But this is, in the grander scheme of things, with all the things that we were doing, this was not a huge deal within the foundation. We were, in the process of putting on these major conferences. Most of our energy was going into that and not thinking through this. And there was a ceremony, and it was unusual to have a ceremony, but it was the University of Montreal who wanted to have the ceremony, and, we decided that Alexander Trudeau would be appropriate to be there. It just was a kind of just a slightly different way of doing things.
Are there any, in your tenure, was there any CRA audits done?
I believe so, and I think the CRA actually answered that when they were here.
No, they didn't, and they were quite clear about not answering anything. So, Commissioner Hamilton, if you're watching right now, that's directed at you. You mentioned about the quote. You said, the importance of maintaining, or you wouldn't jeopardize the charitable status. From looking back, obviously there's the donation, but there's also the CNCA requirements. Apparently, were not done for years, as well as the disbursement obligations also apparently were not done. Are these perhaps just a disagreement in how the accounting should be done?
As far as I know, the disbursement obligations, the percentage is what you're talking about there. When I was there, I believe we complied.
And I'm not trying to be difficult,
I am
but
pretty sure, but I can't say definitely because I don't have the documents.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Rosenberg, you were named President and CEO of the Foundation in 2014. And then October of 2015, you found yourself with the Foundation having the same last name as the new Prime Minister. Can you, share with the committee any steps or safeguards that you put in place to limit any donations that could be or at least perceived to be a conflict of interest?
Well, first of all, Mr. Trudeau had not had any dealings with the foundation since before I became the president, and there was a letter from him that I believe came in December 2014 saying that he essentially recused himself, kind of, created a, almost like a blind trust. He wouldn't be involved for the rest of his time in politics. And there were no specific policies put in place, if that's what you want to know. But as his brother said when he testified at the Access to Information Committee, we were very mindful of not doing anything with him, and even his own brother was very mindful of that.
But there are two directors of the foundation who are appointed by the Trudeau family, correct?
That's the structure that was put in place when the foundation was set up and when the funding agreement was put in place.
Okay, now you said earlier that you did not think that a $200,000 donation or a $160,000 donation could be used to buy influence. So are there any limits to donations to the Trudeau Foundation?
Well, I don't think we ever got a donation that would have tested that. The biggest donation we ever got was from the McCall McBain Foundation. And as I said, John McCall McBain, who is probably one of the leading philanthropists in Canada, just gave $200 million to McGill, gave $100 million to Oxford, gave us $3 million. That's about, by far, many orders of magnitude bigger than anything else we'd ever gotten.
Okay. Do you know what the limits are for donating to a politician's election campaign?
No, I don't.
Okay, it's less than $2,000 in this country. So I am excuse me. I'm a bit surprised that $200,000 did not that you could imply that $200,000 would not be significant enough to buy influence in the Canadian political system, given that when the MPs around this table are running for re-election, we cannot accept, it's actually less than $2,000. So it's troubling that these checks and balances would not be in place for the Trudeau Foundation.
Apples and oranges, though, isn't it? I mean, there are individual campaign contribution limits for people running, for office. $200,000 to the Trudeau Foundation on a base endowment of $125 million that was growing was not that big a deal.
Hey, but if someone wants to donate $200,000 to Justin Trudeau's election campaign, and soon finds out that the contribution limits are less than $2,000, I think it would be pretty reasonable for someone to go to Google and say, well, what else can I donate to that has the same last name as the Prime Minister that could be used to purchase influence? Wouldn't you agree that the Trudeau Foundation would come up pretty quickly on a Google search?
Honestly, I don't think so. I mean, I really don't think that the $200,000 was either going to buy influence with us for all the reasons I've said, or influence with the government. I think, if you want to look at influence with the government, look at some of the other bigger deals. $15 billion, and I don't mean to pick on the Harper government, but there were these deals that were done. I don't. Well, these are facts, okay?
Point of order, Chair.
You want to talk
Just
about
one sec, Mr. Rosenberg. I have a point of order.
As Mr. Poilievre talks about
Mr. Rosenberg, just 1 second, gentlemen. Yes. Yeah.
The witness is simply trying to finish his a statement,
Yes,
Chair. Can we allow him to do that?
That's
Just
what
in
I'm
the
attempting
interest
to
of
do.
decorum?
Yes. Mr. Rosenberg, you have the floor, and there's 40 seconds left in this.
I mean, there's so much, there's so much politicization on this issue. You know, some of you guys talk about the Beijing-funded Trudeau Foundation. What's actually not the Beijing-funded Trudeau Foundation. You know, I could say the Beijing-funded deal to buy Nexon. I don't know. I honestly don't think that $200,000 is very significant in the greater scheme of things.
A couple of things very quickly. So prior to becoming Prime Minister, there was the ongoing issue of Justin Trudeau's speaking fees at different charitable events. Did the Trudeau Foundation ever pay Justin Trudeau to speak for a speaking fee at an event?
Not to my knowledge. I'd be very surprised.
And that is the time, I'm afraid.